My parents are actually from the mainland China. They left in 1949 when there was a civil war. And my parents left, they fled with their feet basically. They voted with their feet, and they made their separate ways into Taiwan. There they met, got married, had started a family. And when my father was still in his job as a young man, he scored #1 in his national examinations. And he was noticed by the government and received a chance to come to America. My mother was then 7 months pregnant with their third child. And the thought never occurred to this young couple, perhaps a delay coming to America, letting my father have the chance to see his newborn. He got a chance to go to America, and he took it, no questions asked. It was such a rare opportunity to be able to go to America that it never occurred to them that they could or could not have delayed their departure. My father went first because he was the only one that had his airfare or his passage paid for. And he worked his way across the Pacific Ocean on a ship, then got into an airplane in Portland and flew to New York. There, he worked for 3 years before he was able to find enough resources, earn enough resources to be able to bring us to America. And I still remember coming as a young child of 8. All my father could afford was passage on a cargo ship. So we came as part of the cargo. And the voyage took 37 days. It was 11,000 nautical miles. And as a young 8-year-old, it was a lot of fun. I roamed the ship. My mother probably had a heart attack every single day. I went off and roamed the ship. I talked with the crew, played chess with the captain of the ship, had a wonderful time. But my mother was a young woman of only 27, the only woman on board, aside from her 3 little daughters. And how frightening it must have been for her. But the voyage was worth it because she was coming to America, the land of opportunity, to be reunited with her husband and to give her children the benefit of a better life. We landed in New York Harbor after having traversed the Panama Canal, down the Caribbean, up the East Coast of the United States. And I still remember my father pacing the docks as our ship neared the harbor of New York. Our first few years were very difficult, needless to say. We didn't speak English, we didn't have any friends, we didn't have any family. But what kept us alive and what kept us hopeful and joyful was that we were in America and tomorrow was going to be a better day. So I learned English by watching television. And so, will someone please explain to a little 8-year-old who didn't speak English, why is relief spelled R-O-L-A-I-D-S? And then we would go on these picnics and barbecues, because of the generosity of our newly found neighbors and friends. And we couldn't understand barbecues for the life of us. We had just come from a country that really emphasized being able to cook indoors. I mean, that was a sign of improvement. And then we come to America and you cook things outdoors. We would go to picnics. And we came from an Asian culture that really emphasized respect for our elders. And we heard such horrible things being said about ants at picnics. Can you imagine? Of course, we didn't understand that they were talking about A-N-T-S, and we were thinking about A-U-N-T-S. And then lastly, as an 8-year-old, how do you explain grilled cheese sandwiches? How do you grill the cheese without it falling between the grades? But these are all assimilation issues, which are part of so much of the immigrant experience and so many other people's experience as they assimilate to America. You laugh at a lot of those jokes, and I wanted you to. But they also illustrate that so many of our colleagues' experiences are so different, can be so different from that of our own. And we're one country, united in one, because we're able to reach out and embrace all these different peoples from all different cultures through generations, which is what makes us strong. So when we talk about embracing all these different peoples, we're talking about diversity. It's just a new term for a very old American experiment, and that is an experiment in democracy. Alexis de Tocqueville, when he came to America in 1834, he remarked upon the unique spirit of Americans to come together and form voluntary associations to help those within their midst. We're talking about volunteerism. We're talking about diversity. At every immigration trend or tide, there were newcomers coming in throughout our country. And our country's ability to embrace differences, to embrace change, to not only survive, persevere, but excel is part of our national history, our national culture, our national tradition. So as we go ahead in the times ahead, I can't predict to you whether this economic challenge will remain for a year or two, although my personal opinion is that it will not be that long. We're going through a deleveraging right now, but the negative sentiments of our current milieu is a major issue that can be addressed very quickly and that can be turned around very quickly, surprisingly quickly as well, at the right time. I have great faith in America, in Americans, in our ability to change, our ability to innovate, and our ability to lead. You heard earlier you heard earlier that I said I disagreed with Tom Friedman. I'm giving him a great plug. So if you know Tom Friedman, tell him I'm giving him a great plug. And his book, The Earth is Flat. Sometimes we look at other countries and think that these other countries are somehow more competitive than us, that they have more talent than we do, that they're going to outcompete us. And I think we've got to wipe away all that thinking. Because for a country as young as us, 200 years, we have done tremendous things. We have brought freedom around the world. We emphasize and represent freedom around the world. Wherever I went as Peace Corps director, it was amazing. Wherever I went, if I went to the most remote hamlet in Nepal, outside of Kathmandu, true story, I would hike 3 days outside of Kathmandu, and I would go into the interiors of this very remote mountain kingdom. And I would meet village elders, and they would hear that I'm an American. They would think it's a little strange that an American looks like me, but that was 10, 15 years ago. But when they heard that I was an American, they knew what America stood for, that it stood for hope and opportunity. Everywhere I went, isn't that interesting? How people who have never been to America, never met an American, would know that America stands for hope and opportunity. I never met an American before I was 8 years old, and yet I knew America was a land of opportunity. We have a tradition of change. We have a tradition of innovation. You're being challenged now because of these economic times to be even more innovative than ever before. And you know that Bill would not challenge you if he were not confident in your abilities and if he were not working just as hard, if not more than you. You have a workforce that needs to be motivated. You have a workforce that you depend on to innovate. And that's what your challenge is here today. We are the most creative, innovative, entrepreneurial people in the world, and that's why we will be competitive, armed with our tradition of freedom, tradition for transparency, rule of law, and accountability. With all of that, we will prevail through these times, and we will emerge better than ever before And your company will be one of those leading the way, and I wish you much luck and great success. Thank you.